Are you ready? Okay, I'd like to call this workshop to order. And we are here to work with our lead, Commissioner Lloyd, as well as Commissioner Shanefield. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to suspend Robert's rules.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Smith to suspend Robert's rules. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Shanefield. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we have suspended Robert's rules, and Commissioner Lloyd, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Chairman Wendling. We're gathered today to do a little bit of futures planning, strategic planning, and really starting to look at some of the budget projections for next year as we prepare. And, you know, we've kind of committed as a commission to be a little bit farther ahead and work on budget a little bit earlier this year, just to be more prepared for what's coming. And so today we're going to start with Assessor Dave Davis. And he's going to give us the current projections, and we'll go from there. And I'm glad you're putting it on the screen, right?
I am. Yes.
Good. I didn't realize my vision was bad until I read this chart.
Yeah. Well, and this started out as the big spreadsheet that you've always seen.
Mhm.
And then we added onto it and added onto it. And some of this stuff is irrelevant for the discussion today, but I put the work into it, so I wasn't getting rid of it.
Okay.
All right.
We're friends and all, but I'm not doing it over. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and I'll pull that over. Can you guys all see that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's what. Okay, so what we're looking at is this, again, the same spreadsheet. It's all the same information, but what we've done is added to it and broke it down a little bit more to actually get it in context of Senate File 60. Okay, so Senate File 60, just general overview, took all of 2021's production, calendar year 2021, the year we're in now, half of the year before, and put it in a pot off to the side and said, it's still your money, but you have to get it in 8% increments starting in 2023. Okay, calendar year 2023 in December.
How many increments?
It's over 12 and a half years.
Okay.
But it actually, the first payment is going to be received in December of 2023 for all of that valuation. Okay, now the question is, how much valuation is that, and how does it relate to the 12 mil? So what we did is we used the same format that we had, and we're getting the same estimates from the mineral tax division that we had before as well. Okay, so up to this line that you see here, column H, I can't see what you're seeing, but right here,
We got it dated June 21st.
June of 2021. So the production up to there, and those are actual severance tax numbers. Okay, so those are the actual numbers. We won't have the next 3 months until December, like we talked about in the past. It's always 3 months behind. But the information that we have through June 2021 is accurate. And you can see there, the oil value through June, we should have been at 50%. We should have had 50% of the year before's valuation if everything was consistent. Well, we're at 69%. So the oil value is considerably higher than what it was the year before. And those numbers off to the left where you see 2021 certified value here, those are actually the values that we use for the 2021 tax billing. Okay, so that's 2020's production, but 2021's property taxes. Okay, so when we compare these, we're always comparing them back to that original certified value. Okay, so as of June 2021, our oil value was 69% of what it was the year before. So anything over 50% is an improvement. Okay, if you go down to the next one, natural gas.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
That's 69.49% of the 168,311.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So we're always comparing it back to that certified value we used the year before. So if you go down and look at natural gas, we're already at 91% of the year before. So natural gas is up considerably from the prior year. Now, when you ask us to make estimates, this is why our eyes kind of roll in our heads when you do that, because I looked yesterday, the price of oil was $82 a barrel. Natural gas was $5 an MCF.
Wow.
I looked the year before, oil was $41 a barrel and natural gas was $2.79 at MCF. And if you can figure out why, we need to talk, because I have no idea. So it's just one of those things. So that's why the predictions are kind of tough on our end. Okay, if we go down to the next one, surface coal. Okay, you can see surface coal through June of 2021 is 39% of the year before. So it is trending down. Okay, not as much as the other ones are trending up, but it is trending down. And then underground coal is a little bit higher, but I think we all know that underground coal is going to go away. So we are actually going to have that go to zero by the end of the year. I think November was the date that they were going to shut that down. And then Trona is trending up. We're at 53% of what it was the year before. So we're 3% over, but we're expecting that to increase. The inspections we did at the Trona mines this past fall and last month or so, the inclination we got from the Tronas was production was up and they were going to really do well the rest of the year. Now price is down. So the valuation is a combination of those two, but at least production is up and people are working. So that's where we're headed with that. Okay, all good news. Now, the irony of this, okay, I'm going to slide over and go to the end. Okay, so now I've extrapolated July, August, and September. Okay, I went back and looked at the 3 months. I did that for oil and natural gas. And you think the stuff is just headed straight up, and it's not. A couple of those months, it kind of wiggled a little bit. So from June to July, I've got the oil value, it just trended up about 1%. Okay, in July to August, it was actually down about 5%. And then in September, it was up about 4%. Now, these are my estimates with the data that I could come up with. This is not certified values. This is just Dave doing the best he can. Okay, now for the rest of the year, I just ballparked it at 20 million. So September or October, November, December, I had that valuation at 20 million each month. Could be higher, could be lower, but we're kind of in the ballpark, I think. Okay, if we go down to oil, I did the same deal. Okay, oil and the price of oil was more consistently up than what, or I'm sorry, natural gas was more consistently up than what the oil was. But from June to July, I have it up just in my estimates, 13%. And then it was up 9% from July to August, and then 16% from August to September. So trending the right direction. But again, what's going to happen the rest of the year, I don't know. I penciled in $43 million for the rest of those last 3 quarters. Okay. Now, the surface coal, I actually had that on a decline. I'm not sure that's going to be the case after thinking about this a little more. If the underground coal value goes down, the production goes down, they may offset that with an increase in surface production. So again, this isn't a huge part of this value puzzle, but it is something that may change when we get those next 3 months worth of production from the Department of Revenue. Okay. So the final number, when we go to the end, the one that matters the most is right here. Okay, with the information that we've got, we think mineral values are going to be up to $1,256,000,000 next year, which is 29% over what the value was that we certified for the tax billing this year. Okay, that's great news. But the irony of this is we've seen a significant increase in price in both oil and gas. Trona's coming back. Because of Senate File 60, these increases in this valuation is put off to the side. It's in this pot that's left off here, and we're only going to receive 8% of that a year for 12 years, starting in December of 2023. So the value's up, the tax dollars are going to be up, but the payment back to the county is going to be delayed. And it was all due to that Senate File 60.
13 years, right?
They're 12 and a half, actually. Why they didn't do 10, I have no idea. Somebody thought they were being silly. I don't know. 10 would have made more sense to me, but they did 12 and a half. So that's kind of where we're at as far as the mineral values are concerned. Now, if I was a commissioner, the next question is, how does the revenue come in? Where's it go? Now, here's where I have to apologize, because all of this stuff you see in here, please don't bother with that. I was trying to do this by tax district, I actually broken everything up by tax district, and it was more for my benefit than you. I think it was more detailed than what we needed for today. So I actually did it differently down on the bottom here. What you can see there, it's our total 2021 mineral value was 969 million, and half of that is deferred. Again, Senate File 60. That valuation, the payment on that valuation was deferred and put in that pot that we're going to get paid back 8% a year. Okay. So I took that and all of the estimated mineral value that we just talked about, this 1,256,000,000, added them together, multiplied it by the 12 mil, and then calculated 8%. Okay, so our first payment that we will receive on these mineral values due to Senate File 60 in December of 2023 is going to be $1.6 million. And that's just the 12 mil. That's all. So that'll be broken up among the library and the Southwest Council, anybody that's under the 12 mil. But that first payment in 2023 should be in the neighborhood of $1.6 million. Okay. So projecting this further, and again, projecting. So Bonnie and I talked about the monthly revenue estimates, because the other part of Senate File 60 is going to start the monthly payments starting next year. Now, the time frame on that is the mineral is actually extracted, and we're going to say in January, starting in the first month. The severance tax is due in March of that same year, so March 2022. The severance tax is going to be paid to the Department of Revenue, and then the Department of Revenue is going to invoice the company for the amount due. Evidently, the companies have a hard time making that calculation, and the department decided it was much better to have them invoice the company for the correct amount rather than having the company calculate it on their own and then having to do any sort of adjustments to that billing. So that puts another 10-day window in there. But we don't think the distribution on this mineral tax payment is going to show up before May. Now, this is the first time we're doing anything like this. There are going to be hiccups in this, whether it be the Department of Revenue side, the county side, the company side. There's going to be issues with this, but we are expecting the first payment to be received in May. Now, that first payment amount, with the estimates we've used, if everything stays consistent, the first payment that we would receive in May of 2022 is going to be $1.2 million, and that's the number that's there in red, the 1,256,000. Okay, that's the estimate that we're using at this point. Now, that's not the only money that the county is going to receive from property taxes. Again, Senate File 60 is just for minerals. Okay, so now we have all of the other taxes that are still on the system we used to have. So it's your residential properties, your commercial properties, the ag properties, personal property, and then the industrial properties as well. So based on the calculations that we did for that billing, there's another 6 million that will probably filter into the general fund when the second installment is due in May. That's just some other money that's kind of, when we always talk about tax dollars, we always talk about minerals, but that other portion now is more than 50% of the mineral value for this specific year. So there is another $6 million that's coming in May. So just keep that in mind as well. I think that's all I have, unless you guys have questions. I'd be happy to answer. I'll do the best I can.
I have a quick question. It was one that I was going to ask outside of this meeting, but it ties directly into what we just talked about. So what happens? I've had a couple of these companies ask me what happens if they just pay their full amount up front.
They can.
Do we get that up
Yes.
front, or is the state going to limit? No? Okay.
The way I understand it is if the companies, they have to make their first installment in November.
Right.
Okay, that's still required, but they have the option to pay the second installment as well. It's been billed and they can pay it.
Okay.
So who's going to do that? I have not heard. That would be a question for the treasurer's office. There have been companies in other counties who have requested to be not necessarily on this payment system with Senate File 60. They want to stay on the old system. They don't want to change their accounting systems for whatever reason. They want to stay on the old system. Now, I would caution you that is very labor intensive for the treasurer's office to manage, because you're going to have some that are in, some that are out. And managing that seems very tough. My personal opinion, not as your assessor, but as a taxpayer, Senate File 60 was put in place to protect the taxing authorities, okay, to protect them from bankruptcies and companies leaving in the middle of the night, all those kinds of things. What we just went through with Southland, same deal. This would eliminate some of that because that tax revenue is coming in much quicker. And it's making that expected tax revenue from those taxing authorities available to them sooner rather than that 18-month deferral where maybe the company's still here when the payments due, maybe not. So in my opinion, as a taxpayer, I think Senate File 60 solves a problem. Now, it's not perfect by any means. What it does is postpone those payments for those taxes that have been severed, those minerals that have been severed, and those taxes that are due for 12 and a half years. And I am very, very concerned that some of these companies won't be here in 12 and a half years. If you have the opportunity to talk to any of your legislators, I would think transactions like this between these oil and gas companies, and it's really more that industry than the others, but the oil and gas industry, at the time that ownership changes, this tax amount is known and it should be paid in full. Just like a real estate transaction. You know the liability, you know it's part of the purchase price, pay it in full, make the county whole, and then change the ownership. And if you have an opportunity, if you're asked that question, and in my opinion, there's no 18 months, no year and a half, no nothing. Get it paid. Those taxing authorities are due that money. You know the amount that's due, make it part of the price, pay that liability and make the county and the taxing authorities whole. The part that scares me about that, like I said, is we're postponing all of this tax revenue for 12 and a half years. That's very scary because I'm not sure how many of those companies are actually going to be here. So if that happens, personally, I would like to see that liability paid up at that point. In the long run, I do think Senate File 60 does smooth this out. It makes the liability for the taxing authorities. I think it protects us from bankruptcies, companies leaving in the middle of the night, those kinds of things. Now, the department is actually looking at this as well. The Department of Revenue is looking at this as far as identifying whether the payment to the department was made on time, and if not, an interest amount calculated on it as well. So there is going to be some of that at their end as well. So we're all going to learn about this at the same time, and we'll see how it all goes. But in the long run, I think it will be beneficial, but it's just going to be bumpy until we get it going. So
Steve, how will this look compared to our revenue, our cash flow previously? Will this look any different, some different?
You're going to be receiving the money similar to the sales tax distribution. You're going to get it monthly, where it's going to happen rather than the 2 installments, November and May. So we're not going to have big checks twice a year. We're going to have more likely equal checks throughout the entire year. So it's going to smooth out that cash flow stuff.
Will we have any lag? Is there going to be like a gap, or we're going to be okay starting May?
Right.
Will it be lesser in May and it catches up, or are we going to be okay kind of starting May?
I think we're going to be okay. I don't know that every county can say that. I think you may have to look at reserves for a month or so, something like that, just as a potentially, just because of the cash flow issues. And again, this is the first time anybody's doing this, so there are going to be issues. The other thing that's going to be part of this too is the special districts. They have the same, they're on the same plan. So now we did have conversations. We reached out to the special districts and talked to them regarding this and made them understand that second installment in May, that big check that they used to get, they're not going to. They're going to get a smaller check in May that's going to try and get them through. And some of them have reserves and some of them were aware. Some of them weren't, but a lot of them are already levying their maximum amount. So they really didn't have any other options. I don't know that any of the special districts levied more to cover this, but they were made aware that this was something they just needed to understand how it worked and make sure they had enough reserves as well so they could get through until the cash flow got going the way it was supposed to. Okay. And that's the best I know. The lady that did the High Desert Rural Healthcare District that worked with the district out there, she worked with a lot of the other special districts. Evidently, there's like an association of those district managers and stuff, and they had big discussions about this as well. So I think if they were part of that group, then I think they were made aware of this as well. So it was something that it shouldn't be a surprise to them. We'll see. We did the best we could trying to let them know what was going to happen.
Very good.
Okay. Bonnie's got some more information for you as well. One other thing, this is really not really part of the topic, but I wanted to show you and what's happening in Farson.
Yeah, special districts, that's what I was.
Yeah.
Which one, their improvement district?
Improvement district. Okay, so,
If you lose the coal, yeah, we have to meet the payment, right?
okay. Yeah, that's a huge part of their, and you can see here, I actually went to Farson, did a presentation for the landowners up there. We talked about their ag land, but then we also talked about what was going on with the improvement district, because it was honestly just killing them. Because they have to levy enough for bonds and interest. So statutorily, that's what an improvement district does. So as the value went down, the mill levy had to go up. So if you can see here, 2000, let's go 16 to 17, this little window here, their valuation went from 136 million down to 66 million. I actually called the Department of Revenue at that point and said, somebody screwed up. Somebody didn't, you guys somehow, something's not right. Well, what had happened is, and I heard this from one of the people in Farson, that they had actually had a collapse at the Bridger underground mine. And instead of going through and cleaning it up and then continuing in that vein, they actually moved to a different part of the mine and it was no longer in that tax district. So that's how that valuation dropped so much. But if we go over here, you can see the total valuation of this district. You can see it's just fallen off the charts. Okay, and the biggest part of that is the underground coal, the green line. As it goes, the rest of the value goes. Now, I was up there and I was talking to the landowners up there about the ag values. And one of the comments was, and I think I addressed it before they asked, but I knew they were thinking it. You're just raising our ag land to make up for the drop in the coal. Well, part of the reason I put this together is their ag land barely shows on the chart. I mean, you can see it down here. It's not even, you can't even determine what it is. Down on the bottom, it's the coal that's actually driving this. So, and once I explained it to them, they were okay. But we talked about the levy in this district, and improvement district levy in 2025, they're actually paying it off in 2025. So if they can just survive, they'll be fine. But this levy started out at just under 3 mills. And I don't think anybody could have predicted what was going to happen. But right now, next year, if everything stays the same, as far as the values are concerned up there, what I did is just subtracted out the coal value. There won't be any next year. I just took it out, left everything else the way it was. And if that logic holds, that levy for that improvement district goes to 12 point, almost 13 mills, where it had initially started at 3. So when you look at their total levy for tax district 102, which is what includes Farson, they're actually going to be 84 mills by the time they're done, or next year this
Only
time.
like 5 more years left on it, right?
Correct. And I probably 4. I'm hoping it's only 4. Now, when they talked about the coal coming out, I was scared to death to do the math because I didn't know. I mean, in my head, I was thinking this mill levy for this could go to 20 mills. Well, it didn't. They had actually dropped their cemetery district levy last year a little bit for whatever reason. And then the increase in the improvement district had kind of offset just a little bit. So it didn't go up as much as I thought. But next year, it's going to be over 84 mills. So those people up there are going to be paying their burden. And I give them a lot of credit because they're willing to tax themselves when they have something they want. And it works for them. But just so you know, if somebody calls or you get any concerns about this, I'd be happy to go up and do another presentation up there with all those
Pay
people.
better before you do notice this, just to remind them.
Yeah, and we may go up next year again and actually do it in the spring and try and pick a good time when we can get more people there and talk about that and maybe more of the ag land issue too. So, but anyway, that's all I have for today. Unless you have any questions, I will keep you posted. The next set of numbers I'll get will be in January. Okay, now the way Senate File 60 is going to change right now, we got the value and then we created a tax after the fact. So we knew the value first. With this change in Senate File 60 and the monthly payments, we're not going to know it until it comes in. So the ability to estimate kind of goes out the window because we don't have the valuation numbers before the treasurer's office gets the payment. So it's gonna we're gonna have to adjust to this and figure out a better way to do it. At our Waco meeting, the Department of Revenue was there, and they are still going to provide this information to us, and we're hoping that they can provide it a little bit faster. So we'll have a better idea. Now, whether that happens or not, again, I'm kind of cautious of the hiccups in this thing, but if we can get it, we will, and we will provide it as needed. So, yes, sir.
Question, Assessor Davis, going back to those special districts, and I know you used the Farson Improvement District as an example, but possibly with that mill levy that they adjusted for that district, and it's primarily towards that building
Right.
proposition. Is it solely for that, or do these districts have the opportunity within that mill levy to also include operations and maintenance,
Not an improvement district.
not an improvement?
The way I understand the statutes regarding improvement districts, again, is specifically for bonds and interest. And that is all it's for.
Okay.
Anything else has to come from other sources. I think that's why they rent the building out the way they do. Those kinds of things to make up for that. I don't know if they try and get any help from the county as far as their utilities or any of that kind of stuff.
Having to pass at different times, come to the county.
And what a place. I mean, when I did the town hall meeting up there, that's where we did it, and it was fantastic. I mean, it is a wonderful
Great,
place
great place.
for that. I'm, like I said, I'm impressed with the people in Farson. I really
I
am.
agree.
So,
Thank you. Any questions?
Okay.
Okay,
all right, if you want to come
Thank you.
talk about this on the side, I'd be happy to sit down and show anybody anything you need one-on-one if it's something you're interested in. So,
Well, it looks like we're holding our own though, so far for next year.
right. The irony of this to me is that the value gone up, again, assuming my numbers are good, we're up 29% mineral values. The irony of that is we don't get it for 12 years, 12 and a half years. And it doesn't start until 2023. And it's just a fluke. I mean, it could have gone the other way. It could have been down 29%. But the fact that the oil and gas prices went up so high, we're actually way ahead of schedule. When Bonnie and I talked about estimates as far as revenues were concerned, we didn't have estimates like this. We were thinking like 100 million total rather than about 300 million, which is where we're at right now, estimating again. But if the oil price will stay where it's at and the natural gas price will stay where it's at, we'll be okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Miss Barry, was that your plan, Commissioner Lloyd?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry to.
So
step
that's
in.
okay.
All
I was
righty,
getting ready and you beat me to the punch. We're a team.
all righty. Good afternoon, Miss Barry.
Good afternoon.
Welcome again.
Thank you. So I emailed all of you a spreadsheet this morning, and I finished this last night after Dave and I talked yesterday, and he updated me on some of his numbers. So I first want to just go over the summary part. So this should look familiar to you. I presented it in July, and I have updated some of the numbers. So I did this previously, and with the goal in mind that we were trying to keep our reserves at 25 million. So this is kind of just a snapshot of where we think our revenues are going to be for the next couple of years, where our expenditures will be if we stay flat with the changes that I'm aware of. It kind of just shows you just the reserves that we need to balance the budget. And it looks a lot better than it did last time. So if you look, we have a huge increase in we'll have a really good increase in revenue from fiscal year 22 to 23. That is due to valuation going up for one. Two is for fiscal year 22. We are not collecting 4 months of those mineral taxes. So that came out. Well, obviously, we're going to collect 12 months in fiscal year 23. So we get 4 more months of revenue collection. So I think the 4 months ended up being about 3.7 million. The increase in revenue ends up being about 3.4 million. And then also we're going to get some additional PILT next year. We don't know how much it's going to be. I still have 1.5 million in there. We usually get, and this is They're not calculating it the same way they usually do. But just for your reference, we usually get about 3.4 million a year. And the amount they're giving for the additional PILT is about 3 times as much as they normally give in 1 year total. Now, how they calculate it's going to be very different. If they calculated it the same, I would have taken 3.4 million and times it by 3 because it's 3 times as much, but I know they're not calculating it the same. So my estimate's pretty conservative with 1.5 million each year because that's going to be split over 2 years. So 3 million total for that. It's conservative. I have no idea what we're going to get, but that's why you see such a huge difference between, oh yeah, we're on the screen, between this fiscal year 22 and 23 number. So our revenue is going up quite a bit, which has really helped. You can see for fiscal year 22, we were projecting a deficit of over $10 million. We did have a cash carryover of almost 5 million, so we used 5.4 million to balance the budget last year, which brought our general reserves down to 28 million. Well, it'll be projected at the end of the year to be around 28 million. This doesn't include the American Rescue Plan money, so you can tack 8.2 million onto that if you want to include that in the calculation. But if you look from year to year, it looks pretty good. So our reserve balance for fiscal year 23, it's only going down a little bit. We're only using a little bit of that money. And then in fiscal year 24 is when we start collecting that $1.6 million of that over the 12 years, that 8%. So we're going to go up even more that year. So in that year, actually, if all these estimates are correct and things stay pretty flat, we actually are projecting more revenue than expenditures that year, which is fabulous. And then fiscal year 25, that PILT goes away. Expenditures stay pretty flat. We're at a deficit of 1.3 million, estimated cash carryover of 1.5. So we're actually not using any money out of reserves that year to balance. We're just using the cash carryover. Are there any questions on this before we move into the next tab?
Yeah, Bonnie, so traditionally PILT comes in what, late June, early July?
Yes, it comes in usually around the last week of June, second to last week of June, or
Yeah.
last week of June, right around the time we finalize the budget.
That's
So
what I
like the third
remember.
week of June,
Yeah.
that's when it comes in. This additional PILT, we know it's supposed to come in the federal fiscal year 22 and 23. So their fiscal year ends September 30th. So I don't know when we're going to get it. We could get it this fiscal year. I don't know for sure. I know we don't know an amount yet. But I put it in fiscal year 23 and 24. Just because I know we're supposed to get it in their fiscal year 22 and 23. So I don't know when the additional PILT is going to come in. They have not announced that yet. Are there any other questions on this?
I'll be honest, Bonnie, I thought your numbers were high at first until Dave presented. And I was like, man, those just seem high to me. But with that 29% increase, that would be huge.
Yeah, that's why these numbers went up so much. I mean, it's an increase. I originally had projected 1.2 million, and then which was I had projected the minerals to be, what did I tell you about it? 1,069,000, and his projection with the 1.2 something million was about 186,000 a month more.
Yeah.
So take the 186 times 12 months plus the 1.2 million increase that I had already projected, and that gets you an increase of 3.4 million.
Just kind of
Higher
surprising on
revenues.
how high those numbers really are right now and how they're maintained.
Yeah,
So
and
it's-
hopefully they do maintain. And like Dave said, revenue used to not be a hard thing to project for the budget year because we knew those numbers. We were a year and a half behind on the billing. So we knew the prices, we knew the projection, we knew how much we were billing. It's just a matter of how much we collected, whether our revenue was on or off. Now for fiscal year 23, it's just going to be what the value is right now, what the production is right now. And our guess will be that that's what it's gonna be for the following year. We're not gonna know. It could go up, it could go down. We don't know what it's gonna do. So our revenue numbers could be a lot more off than they've been in the past,
Yeah.
starting in fiscal year 23.
Yeah, almost leads me to believe, I wonder, Bonnie, in some ways, if we, instead of like, if we allot certain monies, that we only allot certain percentages at the beginning and kind of wait to say, hey, we'll do these 5 projects up front, but then we're going to wait till the next PILT payments come in to know for sure, because we could be playing some of that balancing act down the road.
We could, but we are blessed to have a lot in reserves. We
Yeah.
have way more in reserves than we need. So previously, or even now, we hold a lot in reserves just for cash flow needs. I don't know if you remember, but I presented this a while ago when we were determining the need for our reserve balance, and we needed about $9 million in reserves for cash flow needs, just because we were collecting money, big chunks of money in November, big chunks of money in May, and then we'd get the PILT in June. So our cash is usually the highest it's going to be all year, right at the end of the year. And it'll fluctuate $9 million. So we're going to have less of that with the mineral revenue coming in monthly. We're still going to, like Dave said, we're still going to get the other taxes, which is right now approximately half of it. We're still going to get that in November and May. So we will still have some fluctuation with our cash, and we will still need some money for cash flow needs, but we'll see it more. We won't need as much for cash flow needs because some of it we will be getting monthly. However, with that comes uncertainty. We don't know how much. So it's going to be smart to keep some money in reserves in case the revenues do go down. Then we'll just end up using more reserves than we had planned.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
It's like the real world. It's like my
Yeah.
business then. where I don't
Yeah,
know.
we're no longer getting a monthly paycheck. Now we have a business where we don't know if we're going to make money or lose money.
Right.
There you go. Hey,
So,
Bonnie, on the bottom, it says payroll increases,
yes.
and I get that for steps, 52 for retirement.
Mhm.
And you got 120 for health insurance.
Yes.
I think at our last meeting, if I understood Gary right, didn't he say 1.3 million? Because of the 17% increase to health insurance?
I don't know. I haven't watched the last meeting yet. And that hasn't been communicated to me. I believe this was with a 5% increase.
We're up to 17%.
Okay.
We were told last meeting, which equates to about 1.3 million.
So when is that gonna take place? Is that gonna be for this coming fiscal year, for this open enroll, or not for this calendar
I
year,
think
for
it's
this open enrollment?
enroll. I think it's for this opening next.
This, we hadn't decided how it's going to,
We haven't
it's gonna
decided
be-
how.
whether who's going to shoulder the burden, whether it's going to be the county, the employees.
Okay, historically, it's been just, if it's whatever increase it is, it's both that increase for the county and for the employees, but I mean, you can just change that. So that was approved for
That was-
For
January, starting in January?
It was,
No.
No.
no,
Or
we-
Okay.
or we-
no formal action yet.
Okay,
We were just informed 1.23 million increase in health insurance.
okay, because
cost.
we can set that rate. You, by we, I mean you can set that rate because we are self-funded. So you determine the rate.
And
They-
he'll bring us proposals.
Okay, and yeah, usually Diversified, they put together something for a recommendation. And our cash balance in the health insurance fund has been going down, which is a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because it's been way too high for way too long. Every year the auditors, well, not every year, because every time we get a new auditor, they always ask me why it's so high. And I tell them, talk to Gary, because I've told him it's too high for a long time.
Right. Couple of, long-term high-risk patients, and it's not gonna be there.
Yeah, and now it's to a very reasonable level, which is, and when that happened, I'm like, well, that's one way to do it. So yeah, it's come down a lot. So the balance in there is very reasonable now, because it's the same as government. The whole idea is you shouldn't be the people paying the premiums. It shouldn't go to pay someone's claim, someone else's claim in a year from now. It should be benefiting them. Same thing with taxpayers. That's why we don't care. That's why we're not supposed to carry a lot in reserves, because the taxpayers, the tax dollars are supposed to go to benefit those current taxpayers. So that is not calculated in here. I believe when Brenda gave me this figure, it was a 5% increase to health insurance. And so if we do go that route, if we increase it 17%, we may have to do some budget amendments because I believe we only budgeted 5%.
I believe you're right.
So,
I think you're right about it.
okay.
So, yeah, you'll talk to Gary.
So that could go up, that could change it. And if that is 5%, then, for 17%, you're gonna have to more than triple that number. So
But
so you're
just,
looking at
I
another
looked at that and thought,
300,000.
yeah, you might want to check in, because that
Okay.
certainly will, 1.3 is quite an impact. So, okay.
Okay.
All righty, next
All right.
page.
Next page. So Chairman Wendling asked me to break this down by payroll, operating capital. So this is just the same as the previous page, except I've broken down the expenditures and I'm just showing what we had budgeted for fiscal year 22. So the current year we're in, and then fiscal year 23, where we're projected to go. This is staying pretty flat. And then I did do a differences column. So we've got, again, the payroll increase of 256,000 for step, retirement and health insurance. Operating is going up for elections. We just side note, we probably will have to do a budget amendment this year, which we have not done yet. Because I'm waiting. The elections department isn't out of money currently, so I'm waiting until they're we have a better idea of how much of a budget amendment we're going to need before we do that, but they will need a budget amendment. And then capital, what I did for capital is I took everything on the list, on the capital list that we have for fiscal year 23. And I also added everything that we didn't pay for in fiscal year 22 that was on the capital list for 22. So that increased that quite a bit, 706. Obviously, we don't have to fund all of that if we don't want to, but that takes care of everything that's on that capital list through fiscal year 23. Grants I left flat, component units flat, outside agencies is going down because of that airport project that will be paid for in fiscal year 22 and it'll go away in fiscal year 23. So that leaves our total expenditures up about 458,000. Are there any questions on this one? Is that what you wanted, Chairman? Is that kind of what you wanted or?
Yeah, it's kind of what I wanted. I
Okay.
was hoping we would get, I'll just say column of revenue and then a column of pay out of payroll, which you have. And then you have Core County operating and maintenance.
Mhm.
Okay. What those costs are, expenditures are subtracted from the revenue would leave a balance of how much from the revenue.
Let's take a look.
And then take that balance, and we know that we are committed to component units to a level. So you have to subtract that out of that balance. And then that will give us a balanced amount to see what we have, not only for capital, but then also for outside agencies.
Okay, do you want me to do grants too then? Minus
Yeah, grants
Because
are
grant
part of it.
revenue is in there. So there's grants, there's component units. So we have 5 million, a little over 5 million left after we subtract all those out. And I did not include capital or outside agencies in there.
Okay, so then we have 5 million point what?
It's 5,024,231.
Okay, so a little over $5 million to decide how that money is going to, if we're talking about balancing the budget.
Yeah,
without-
that would not be using any cash
And-
carryover. That would not be using any reserves.
So you have that amount. So you can determine if you're going to use cash carryover.
Mhm.
You need to add that to it. Then you got to determine, how much is the reserves, but you wouldn't decide that until you did know how much money you have and where it's going to go towards capital and outside agencies, as well as
Mhm.
other component units you need to shore up. And within that is also the 12 mil commitments to the library, museum, and those.
Yeah, and that's included in the revenue, and then it's included in the component units for the
Okay,
money we're
so
distributing to them.
They're in the component, yeah, so component units. Yeah, you're right. That's where they would be.
So that's all in there.
Yeah. And that's, that's tells us the truth of
Mhm.
how our revenues meet our expenditures.
Right.
And it's very obviously, as we extend this out, as we find out, our expenditures in the past have gone over what our revenues are, and that's why we've gone to reserves and we've had them to use them
Mhm.
for the right reasons. But as we get closer to that edge that we want to maintain of 24 million, then we have to ask ourselves, hey, how are we going to begin, to meet that balanced budget?
Right. And hopefully if things stay as good as they are right now with the revenues, in which they've been better, they're good compared to last year, but last year was really bad. So they're on their way up, but they're not where they were in the past. So they could get even better. But if you're looking at the reserves balances, going back to this first page, really, if we stay pretty flat with our expenditures, we'll see revenues possibly start to grow, or not revenues, the reserve balance possibly start to grow.
Well, and
Just
over
because,
and over the past years, where we've looked more than any place else to reduce spending has been within the core government and the elected offices. But, our people who we say we want to take care of and are most important are bearing the largest share of the burden. And that's my point is, when you say stay flat, there are things that these departments need. And we're talking roads, we're talking planning and zoning, we're talking law enforcement, everything. To ask them to stay flat and is also asking, hey, we're not going to be able to give any raises.
true.
And I, at the expense of meeting whatever requests an outside agency makes. They request money. Only it was last year because of the work of members of this commission. Did outside agencies begin to see that budgets were going to be reduced for the right reasons.
Mm.
But yet, I don't think our core government should be reduced and held flat because they need things over the year. And we continue to fund outside agencies at 100%. Those that continue are. So that's my point is, that's why I like that last figure when I asked you, what do we have after those? And you had that 5 million.
Mhm.
That's a reality of a balanced budget. And I've never argued about the reserves being too high. I've always said, I've always supported, let's find out what a level is we're going to fund. But I think it's, if we're going to stay there, great. If we have to do any reductions over this year, I truly believe they can't come out of core government. They've got to come somewhere else.
Yeah, and I don't have any reductions. I mean, all I have in there, well, you can see on this page where I have the increase in payroll, increase in operating, and increase in capital. So we do have core increase, all of the, not all of the increases. Well, yeah, all of the increases are in core government.
Yeah, but we don't have raises in there.
We don't, we can
And-
add them in there though.
Well, and you know what? We should.
And we really can. Our reserve level, this is a little bit deceiving, this 29, almost $30 million at fiscal year 25, because this doesn't include the
Well,
American Rescue Plan money, which
but-
is another 8.2 million.
well, yeah, but I'm not worried about.
I know you're concerned with that. It's a one-time money thing,
Yeah.
but But we're pretty balanced right
Yeah,
there.
and I agree, but keep in mind, as you spend soft money on permanent
Right.
issues, when the soft money goes away,
You don't take the raises back.
no, you don't take the raises back. And then who's going to take the brunt of reduction in budgets? Again, it's going to be core government. Because we haven't done anything with outside agencies or whatever.
It'll be whatever the commission decides.
I know, well, I'm just talking, I'm not expecting you to answer. I'm not expecting, I'm just sitting here looking at all of this and saying, hey, it's about time to quit kicking the can down the road.
Mhm.
And I don't, and I'm just one of those that say, hey, it's time. Let's not kick the can down the road. Let's
Let's make
figure it
some
out. Let's make something
decisions
happen
then.
this year, like we said we were going to. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions for Bonnie?
Well, can you help us if we did decide to do some kind of a grant checklist for the outside agencies to get the objectivity out of it?
Christina's
Sure.
already kind of started an outline.
That too.
Yeah, and we can talk with her during our times.
I just want to give her a
Um,
heads up if we're
yeah.
going to ask her later.
Well, I think the concept of that grant thing too is to kind of provide a way to rank the need for the outside agencies to give us a go. Because if we all go on our gut feeling of what agencies we feel are most important, we're all going to be different.
Right.
And none of us are exactly right. None of us are exactly wrong because it's really more of a moral personal issue than anything. So having some kind of grant concept might be able to provide us a tool to rank impact on the community, total number of people, and where that money is best served too. And I think that to me is the concept of looking for a grant process from the outside agencies.
So are you gonna, I guess and I know you've mentioned that before and I was a little confused previously too, but so are you just gonna provide funding to the ones that rank the highest and not
Well, I
provide
mean, we're
funding to
still,
the
that's
other
a
ones, or-
discussion. Yeah, well, and I think one of the things we have to do as a commission is I have to shade with Doc a little bit in his belief there. I don't believe it's my responsibility to have, as a commissioner, to fund all those outside agencies. I believe if we can at points, but I don't think, and one of my concerns is I looked at cuts last year. There were organizations that we didn't give additional 5% cuts, but we had departments taking 34% cuts where we didn't even have outside entities taking that big of cuts. And then the other concern I have is I look at some of our departments and because of attrition, and that's how we save money over the year, we have departments that are, in my opinion, are understaffed
Mhm.
and they do need additional people. And we've gone a point of time without raises to our employees, without being able to provide to them. And the only way eventually, yes, it's nice to have the big reserves, but eventually we have to trim some of that outside money to be able to possibly provide those other things. And I think those are all discussions. So I think, and like one of the big things, there's 5, 3 commissioners, 5 commissioners may say, no, we want to still fund all agencies. But I think we could use that grant piece as a tool to help determine, to provide information to us of what entities do, because I don't think we all realize, like we funded some agencies last year that had an impact of like 7 people.
Mhm.
But we fund some organizations that have an impact of 250. If you want to be honest, the biggest youth organization in the community we don't fund, but that's actually Green River Rock Springs Youth Baseball serves over 480 youth. And so, but I mean, and I don't want to bring that, but then the argument comes, are we opening the door as we continue to fund all these organizations to other organizations making equal claims? So I think the concept of the grant process to me is to provide some clarification and some statistics and real information to pull it away from subjective and emotional. Because I'll be honest, if it's emotional, I'm going to give the senior centers every time. Because I believe I believe the reason we have $37 million in reserves is because they've paid a lot of those taxes. And, but that's one person's opinion, and it's more of an emotional and a non-objective opinion. So I think
Right.
the grant piece could give us some information to help us make decisions and help us weigh. And maybe it's not which organizations get money and which organizations don't get money, but maybe it's the level of some of them or how
Okay.
they're funded. So I think it could just be a good tool in general.
Okay, my concern was just, and like I said, I didn't know how you were gonna rank them, but if you're looking at, if you rank something higher because it has, it affects more people, then you have to think, oh, well, we give a lot of money to, for example, the youth home. It doesn't have an impact on a ton of people, but the cost per person it does have an impact on is a lot higher.
The number of people would be one of the numbers you'd look at, but you'd also look at populations that they were affecting, the impact. We'll come up with a
Okay.
system. So.
Some of those questions you already asked, when you
Yeah.
send out that budget thing, could be
Mhm.
put into a matrix, a grant checklist, and you get 10 points for this. So it's not,
Okay,
one item is not going to overshadow all the others.
okay.
As a final.
Okay, and that's my concern. My concern is like, oh, well, we shouldn't give any money to the youth home because they only service this many kids, and we've got this other organization servicing this many people, but okay. But that's why I've always looked at it more of a financial situation, like how many people, like how much money do you need to sustain your services? I don't know. I guess my opinion was just more what services are important at what level, and is it, how much do you want to fund to do that? If they need to cut, if you need to cut funding, it would be find out what level of service they could provide at that level, and is that cut worth it to the community, or is it not? And I just think the point system kind of distorts that a little bit because it's too. But I haven't seen your point system yet, so maybe it's perfect.
Well, and we're just talking and we're developing. This is an outside the box concept. that we
Okay.
knew.
That was just my concern. I was worried that some outside agencies, and then you have some that can probably easily get funding, whereas again, the youth home probably struggles to get donations.
But with that being said, though, it's hard to do all that research yeah, I mean, there's a lot of points to this we could get to. So
Yeah.
Dave, you had something.
I'm just curious, when you talk about the grant fund, are you talking about the entire 12 mil going to the?
Oh, no, just what we may have left over to give to outside entities, running it similar to a grant.
Oh, we were thinking your department in particular.
Yeah, we need an increase. We
We
need all
would
12
see,
mil.
you know. how
Actually-
we get- yeah, we back a little bit.
And not just your department, the assessor's salary, but they,
So you're still gonna have a levy for Southwest Council. you're still
Yeah.
gonna have a levy for-
yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So
So this
All
is
right, is
just
there-
for outside agencies that you're
Yeah.
talking about, right? Okay,
So-
that's what I thought.
any other questions for Bonnie? Well, thank you to Bonnie and Dave both for the great
Thank
work
you.
and the information. I think it helps set us up for next year, a little bit of where we're going to be. It's more positive than I expected. So I'm excited for that. Thank you for Christmas a little bit early. So thank you.
It all changed, so.
I know. Now it changes month to month. So
It could go up too. Just saying that.
Yeah.
Could.
like your positivity.
I mean, that's which way it's going. Why would it go down?
No,
now?
right now with the level of the cost of those, Bonnie, you're right. So
Well, and I think you are our best thinker for our accounting processes besides give us the treasurer. But I mean, if you have ideas, I mean, rather one-on-one share them with us. I mean, come to us. Doesn't mean we have to accept them, but here's some things I've been thinking of alternatives for whatever that might help us.
Well, I think the best thing to do would just be find out what, if you're unhappy with the level of service or maybe the amount of funding of any of the component units, outside agencies, because that seems to be where you're wanting to make your rejections. If you're unhappy with either the level of funding or the level of service, I think find out what they can do with less. Say, if we cut you to this, what can you do? What would you have to do? We cut you to this.
We asked them, like, can you survive if we cut you 20% or?
It's not really, can you survive? I think it's more, what can you do? What services can you provide? What services would you have to cut? I can tell you if they can survive or not, just based on the form. And looking at the form to see how much money they have. Some of them have, some of them don't need another dime for another year and they'll be just fine.
Because we don't read all those questions. If we can see some kind of a spreadsheet that shows.
Mhm. Well, on the last page, so on the very last page of the form, there's a question that asks how many days cash on hand you have. And the days cash on hand formula, it calculates your daily operating expenses, and it takes your total cash and divides it by your daily operating expenses. And basically whatever number that is, if it's 352, that means you can operate for 352 days without $1 of revenue. That's how long you can operate. So when you're seeing, days cash on hand at 453, they don't need the funding for the year.
Well, the question
That'd be
then,
just
the
fine.
question then becomes,
How about the seniors?
what is your
They have that.
strategic plan for your reserves?
And that's that, and you had decided at 25 million and we're well above that.
Mhm.
We're doing just fine, especially once you tack in that,
Well,
the American Rescue Plan money.
and I'd like to also remind my kind commissioners, fellow commissioners, that whatever we do moving forward impacts what Bonnie has to do and prepare for in the budgeting process. So we've got to keep that in consideration as we move forward. If we're going to move with the grant process, that needs to come together very, very quickly. And so that Bonnie also has time to prepare the proper documents for those agencies and component units.
So
So
usually,
there's a lot of moving parts as we move forward that have to be addressed and addressed rather quickly.
we get those out in, well, I come to you in February with the schedule and the forms. So if you do want to do something like that, if you want to put something together, if you could do it by February, that would be ideal. I usually get those out in March and then they're usually due in April. So
Okay.
if you do want to go that route, definitely get something together by February so I can get that out and I'll come with a schedule in February. And are we still wanting to do the same form we usually do or a similar one? Should I bring that to you for changes or are you wanting to go completely separate route? Or are you wanting to bring them together
Well,
into
I
one
think
form?
the question becomes is, we've got some suggestions about going with a grant process,
Right.
which would be somewhat.
So I don't
different.
know if you want it to be, two separate forms or if you want to combine them into one, or if you just want to do
think
the
we got-
grant route.
I think we need to further develop and then decide what we're going to go with
Okay.
at that point.
Okay, well, just let me know what you want to do. I say the 1st of February, so we can
Mhm.
get that
Well, I'd-
fine tuned and
I'd
get it
hope s-
out in March.
I'd hope sooner.
Okay.
So,
This
yeah,
commission's
absolutely.
got to,
Because we've also had discussions about starting the budget process a little bit sooner by meeting with people a little more upfront, just to have more time to make decisions in that too. So.
Yeah, are we still planning on doing that starting in January? I think the plan was just to
well,
bring a couple of
we
them
talked
in
about it and said
January.
we would and
Yeah.
I think we need to, if this commission's in agreement. And I also think when we hit that route, our meetings won't be as good as they were today. Today was a break, thank God. But I anticipate they're going to pick up as we move forward. So I'm going to encourage the commission to look at off Tuesdays or off Wednesdays. I preferably Tuesdays or even Thursdays of the same week. I mean, some of us like everything in the same week, and so we have another week to do our personal stuff.
Can we do evenings
And if
or
we,
late afternoon?
yes, whatever works for everybody. Saturday. So, but I'm going to say we need to move into special meetings for workshops and that type of thing. What's your thoughts, commissioners?
Well, and Doc, I think that leads right into the next subject I had was exactly how do we want to move forward and how do we, so I think that's the question that we should be looking at right now.
Well,
My concern is, I think we just need to get our heads around the table over in the Castle Rock Room or somewhere. It could be a public workshop, but we need to do more brainstorming, fleshing out ideas and getting outside input is what I think would be.
this
helpful.
room is designed to bring tables in.
Well, that would work.
I mean, it doesn't have to, I guess it could still be on YouTube, but this room's designed to we could bring in tables or one table, so we all sit around it
Yeah, I don't know.
and work at it.
But I think that some of the others who are in the financial part of this county could help us. Not just as commissioners trying to develop all of this. I don't know. It's just my idea. Maybe I'm ahead of your agenda. So
Mhm.
I'm sorry, Roy.
I'm listening. So thank you. So I guess hitting what Doc's question was, do we, how do we attack this when we start meeting with organizations? I think we decided we were going to start with, wasn't it the original plan component units first, Doc, and then moved to outside agencies?
Yes.
I kind of like Mary's concept of gathering around the table because, one of the things that's nice is that you can kind of see everyone rather than have to crank your head all the way 9 miles down and see Doc and get through 3 other people to get there. So I think what we should do is maybe start developing a schedule of these are when we're going to see, come up with an agreement of commissions. Are we just going to make it long Tuesdays? Are we going to do these meetings at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays or whatever we're going to do is start moving in that direction and letting people know because this is out of the norm for them too. But we need to prepare them that, hey, some of this will be looking different. What's everyone's thoughts? Not everyone at once.
Not everyone at once. And it shouldn't be who talks the most makes the decisions. So I try to listen for that, Commissioner Lloyd. I think it just, everybody's got to have a say in moving forward.
Well, I guess one of my questions is that if revenues stay where they're at right now or continue to go up, are we gonna have to continue to cut? And if the answer is no, then do we need to even bring people in and start cutting and hacking where we don't need it?
It's a good
I mean,
question.
what, we have to know that we're gonna need to do that in order to cut. We clearly don't need to put more into reserves.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look at some other projects and things like that, but
I see where you're at, Lauren, but I think one of the bigger pictures too is that's if we keep everyone flat at the county level. So I mean, as a whole, do we need to be looking at raising some budgets, looking at extra positions? How do we analyze that? Do we do an analyzation of each department of what the actual number of employees needed for each department is? Are we rightly staffed at every place? What do we need? I think we need to start having the discussion of a raise plan or, is that something we want to look at? Because right now, I think you're right, Lauren, we don't have to do a lot of adjustment, but if we go into some of that a little bit more, that we may have to do a little bit of hacking. So, but not nearly what we thought we've had to do the last 2 years.
Well, just to remind you too, that spreadsheet that I showed you showed us at almost 30 million in reserves and after 22, 23, 24, 25, after 25, and we were going to go down to 25 million in reserves. So we've got 4 million there to play with.
But I guess my pushback would be just because we said we go to 25 doesn't mean we necessarily have to unless we need to.
Okay.
Sorry, Jeff. I mean, we're just heard that, with the ad valorem tax that we could be looking at it being more shifty and we may want to be and 25 is probably more than enough. To be careful.
25. So, okay, just to put, let me put this in perspective for you. I should bring up I actually have a paper copy of it. So our total expenditures, including the component units, outside agencies, basically everything that comes out of that 12 mil and the general fund is we're at about 48 million in expenditures. So 25 million is more than half a year of cash, of days cash on hand, which is very, very, very healthy, more than healthy, too much. It's too much. I don't know. I know you decided on 25. I don't know if you remember my recommendation was 15.
I do.
Very thankful we had that.
I am thankful we did too.
That brought forward, we would have been hurting and totally whacking program. So I will defend at least the 25. I mean, we had thought to have some kind of insurance plan that will write us out. We still don't know where that coal and oil and gas. is gonna
No, we don't. And next year we're just right now we're estimated an increase of 2.4 million more than what we were anticipating. So I mean, it could swing down 2.4 million, but 2.4 million is not that much when you have 30 million in reserves. You're going to be okay.
I could go with that.
So it's still not even that much if you have 25 or 20.
So
It's still doable. So
When this $7.60 stuff, we know where
When
stuff
it
is
levels
headed,
off, huh?
we can get
Yeah.
through the beginning of this. I think all of these conversations are gonna have much more validity. The revenues will be more consistent. So little changes rather than huge changes.
I agree.
So I think I kind of fall in the middle with the reserve number, but I know what Monty's saying, I know what Rob was saying, when he was here. I still think more is better than less. The insurance fund needs to be, solidified again. do the additional claims, you need a group, you have funds available for that. That kind of stuff, but I would just caution us, to be careful until about 60 is resolved, and then we see how the minerals are going to trend. Yeah, they're great now, but we've seen in the past where they can drop.
Going back to the discussion of budgets. I think it's as important that when we have good years, that we look at budgets carefully and determine what it is they need.
Yep.
As important as when money isn't as good. I think they go hand in hand.
Mhm.
I think when we do the outside agencies, whether it's a grant or whether it's the process we've normally used, I would much rather see us sit around a table as commissioners and talk about each one of those applications and sit there in a group with, I don't care, you can set chairs around the room so people who want to come in and go and listen, they can. But I think we decide by looking and talking, and we set the amount that they get rather than give them the amount they want. And I think by doing that, plus keep in mind what you've shared and support the level of funding for our reserves. There's nothing to say that once we do it and things get a lot better, we cannot earmark who it is we might want to give some more money to. For instance, I'll just throw it out there. You got an outside agency such as either public health, or you got hospice, some of those that, okay, you might look at them and say, hey, based on where you're at, and I don't mean those two, it's just a good two I drew off the top of my head. We may take a look at where you're at and say, hey, here's what you're going to need to get through, or what you have is enough to get through. So we're not going to give you everything you're requesting.
And that's what we did last year.
Yeah,
And that's
and
why
it-
some entities didn't end up with any
and
funding from
I
the
know it.
county.
And then if any one of those, I don't care if it's hospice, I don't care if it's public health, if money's better and they need it, there's nobody that says they can't come to this commission and say, hey, and prove to us they need the money.
Mhm.
We should not be expected, and I say this with scrutiny, that the county should not fund when outside agencies will not look at other grant programs or funding resources. We should not be the only funding resource for outside agencies. They should have to look, and if we need to, we pare them down until they do. I can think of outside agencies out there that I know how much money they're getting, but really what do they need to operate on? Payroll, operation and maintenance. And I don't know if it's capital they even need, but they're going to need printers and stuff like that. But yet their budget that we're giving those places are 2.5 times more than what they need.
Usually they don't ask for more than what they need for the year. I think the problem is a lot of them don't take the balance sheet accounts into consideration. They don't take how much cash they have in the bank account into consideration, and they're trying to match their revenues with their expenditures. And they don't know, I don't think that they understand the financials enough to understand that they can use some of that cash that's sitting in the bank.
Or maybe we don't understand their financials that much as a group. And what we probably need to do is, if we sit down and look at them individually, there are probably more than one or two that you need to sit with us on, that look at them and say, hey, look at this,
Mhm.
and we can decide.
Mhm. And that's why I make recommendations the way I do.
Well, I know, but I'd like to see it done a little differently, to
Okay.
where we look at their stuff. It's in soon enough that we sit down as commissioners and look at each one of them and decide that, hey, I know you requested this, but here's what we're going to give you.
Okay.
Whether it's the grant or whether it's the old process. So I don't care how we get there. That's just food for thought.
Okay.
That's just me. I'm only one. Come on.
I
commit.
felt like we went that way a little bit more last year, not at the
I felt
beginning,
we
but at
did
the
too, but I
end.
think we can go more.
Yeah, I've always been opposed to the just percentage cuts because that percentage cut for some people means jobs and for some people it doesn't mean anything.
I know that's what it means, but you know what? It meant jobs in core government. By that, we reduced jobs and we asked people to do more. So
Mhm.
jobs were impacted.
They were.
They were. We did jobs in core government. It meant jobs cutting in core government. And I don't know why it is we have to do it in core government, but those agencies we fund think they don't have to. So I'm done. Put a fork in me. Commissioner Lloyd, it's all yours.
I got the fork.
No, I got the fork.
So, all right. Any other comments about the budget or questions for Bonnie? I think there's a really good discussion to set us up for next year. I think there's some positivity to what we've seen, but I still think there's some big picture issues we all need to marinate on and think about as far as some of those other things that we've discussed. So, if there's any other questions, if there's no other questions from Bonnie, we'll move on. Anyone? Okay.
Stay tuned and take notes.
What was that?
Stay tuned and take notes.
Okay.
Help us.
All right. And if you have any questions or want any reports or anything, shoot me an email, come visit me. I'm available. So, okay, thank you.
Any other financial discussion for future we want to throw out there by any of the commissioners?
Let me ask this question. Is this the time that we ask Bonnie to put in a consideration for cost of living raise for employees?
Jeff?
So I just jotted down some things. I think we need to what's next steps, what's most important to us. And so just the things I've written down, we need to develop an application form, I guess, for our outside agencies. We need to set a schedule of meetings.
Jeff, will you talk in the microphone a little more? I can't hear you.
We need to develop a application form for outside agencies. We need to set a schedule of meetings. We need to set a schedule for the groups to come and present to us. We need to develop goals amongst ourselves for our budget year. And so, what's our next step? I would say probably, even though I thought of it last, developing our goals as a commission.
Yes.
What do we want to do? That's probably our first goal that we need to do. That would be number one. Developing an application form. We can do that along the way somewhere, but we do need to do that. Setting a schedule of meetings amongst ourselves would be also the next thing. And then groups to present, I guess, would be the final thing there. So, when do we want to meet so that we can develop our goals? What is important to us in the upcoming year, budget year? When can we meet, I guess, is how do we want to meet?
I think that's well put, Jeff. And when I kind of wrote out my agenda for today, that was our third item today, was start talking about what our goals as a commission and as a whole is. And I think after we got the presentation, the best way maybe to do it is to take a few weeks to marinate on it and then come back the next time we meet and just have the whole discussion saying, what are our goals? Setting our goals and our priorities and moving that way. So we have a guidepost of what we're looking for. And then from there, we can kick Bonnie some stuff like we throw in what it would look like if we gave X amount of COLA or X amount of raise or whatever we did. Then we can use that information, that data as we move forward. That sound fair to everyone? Yeah, Lauren.
I also think that something that I know you and I have had lots of conversations with multiple different department heads is looking at, I think that there's some areas still in core government that we are spending more than we need to be spending and doing things that are not required. And I know that some of those are a longer process, but I feel like those discussions need to start happening again as well. And looking at if there is an area that we can reduce or we're not required, do we want to continue with services the way that we're doing them? Or, I mean, we always rush those conversations while we're deciding on the budget.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's the right time or place. I think we need
No.
to have some opportunity to do some research, to talk to our department heads and our elected officials to really look at the numbers and look at the services we're providing and make sure that they are exactly what we should be providing. And that's the best use of our tax dollars.
And I think that could be part of that goals segment
Yep,
too,
I
is, you
agree.
know, an evaluation of things. So. Any other comments?
Well, my comment was, I just don't feel that this. setup in
Commissioner-
this room-
Commissioner,
Or
talk
will you talk to the
talk to the
microphone?
microphone so everybody
Gene
can hear.
can't hear you.
Well, it's not so much us, it's the people that are listening
Yeah.
through YouTube.
I still think we need to get in some kind of a workshop situation where we can have some of our other players involved
Mhm.
at the table with us. And we're sitting around a table where we're having an interactive session. It's very hard one-on-one. I just feel like after being on this board for, 10 months, that we haven't had the opportunity to develop a report even, an understanding of where each of us comes from on a more workshop type basis. I guess is where I'd say we could maybe spend some time developing that. And with what Commissioner Smith has said, as we develop it together, not one-on-one, and we show up twice a month, it's really hard to have an agenda and you're taking action on agenda items, but you really haven't had a chance to flesh out maybe some of the ideas behind it ahead of time.
Okay. With that thought, I know Commissioner Lloyd, you said 2 or 3 weeks to marinate, and that puts.
I was
us-
thinking next meeting.
Well, but
Yeah.
I'm even thinking my observation, purely mine. So we do workshops after meetings, especially if the meetings get done around 1, 2 o'clock. People are pretty wiped. And I think going into this, it warrants as clear a mind as it does showing up for a commissioners meeting. So what I would propose, because I think it's important, is I would like to begin to take these to a workshop setting, a different date and time than our commissioner meetings. Anybody disagree with that?
I think one of the advantage in this day and time is the fact that if someone can't make it over here, we have Zoom options to be able to make it interactive.
Well,
So I think, yeah.
Here's again too, though. With Zoom, it's pretty hard to have somebody sit there and really we're talking about. I think it's important enough that it should be probably at almost all costs
Mhm.
that everybody's present. We'll ask them to set this room up. They can move the podium closer to the bench. They can put in 2 tables so we can sit around them, have a spot at the table for presenters. We can still have our county attorney and clerk at their positions. And we can put chairs around the room for participants or listeners, whatever you want to call them. And just sit down and start out with, and I agree with Commissioner Smith, what are our goals for the next year regarding budget primarily, I guess, and whatever else. And it'll allow for those conversations that Commissioner Shanefield brought up. And it also bring us together and, we may only hash out one goal in one session. But you know what? That's better. One good goal is better than 2 or 3 because we're tired. And that
Absolutely.
type of thing. I also would ask that we limit the sessions and that type of thing. And I don't know, who do you want to facilitate those sessions? You got to have a facilitator.
Well, I do have, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Lloyd talked about, Extension does have mediators, facilitators. I think there's one at Evanston where I don't know if they even charge you, or if they do, it's a low fee. They will do various different kinds of meetings for you, facilitation, mediation. If we just want to get an outside facilitator so that we maintain order in the meeting and we all have equal opportunity to provide input, even to the
Um,
outside entities.
And I don't know what our local 4-H extension office has to provide either.
No, they don't provide it, but it's through the state extension
Okay.
office.
And I believe that's at no cost, isn't it?
I think it is at no cost.
But my question is, do we want to go that route or just something different?
I think we could I think that's not a bad idea, but I think we could start by just having our discussion and have an organized agenda to work through together and go from that point too. And then if we need it down the further, maybe for bigger strategic planning, a moderator could be beneficial.
Okay, so, well, we'll attempt. What's your thoughts, commissioners? You've heard a couple different thoughts. Your preference?
I think the five of us can get together and
Move.
hash out some goals,
Mhm.
In an hour and a half session.
We go hour and a half. Okay, so let's start out with ourselves. And then let's look at an hour and a half. Now let's take a look at what day of the week, commissioners?
Week.
Huh? Well, what week, what date do you want to start? We can go date to date after that. Do you wish to? You wish to start next week on Tuesday, Monday? Do you want to go into November? Of course, gets pretty busy first, second, the third. You've got fourth and fifth. Fifth is a Friday. You don't probably want to do that. Start in the afternoon at what time?
Well, for those that work full-time job, what works? I mean,
Yeah, I
I'm
would,
flexible about the time.
I'm flexible too. I think it goes to Jeff and Lauren and Roy.
I'm available the 25th and the 27th after 4
Of what month?
October.
Okay, 25th and 27th of October.
What days will we go?
Monday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm available on
Monday
25th.
and Wednesday. Okay.
I would be available after 2:30.
Yeah.
I'd have to be afternoon as well.
All right. So
Wednesday, no.
So
if we want to go in person, what works best for you, Jeff, for time?
Afternoon on Monday. Wednesday's my busy 7 o'clock in the morning, Board of Health, all the way till 6 o'clock in the evening, Southwest Counseling Board meetings.
Okay. So what would you like to do, working commissioners, for start time on Monday, the 25th?
4 or 4:30.
Jeff,
That's fine. Either one.
either one, 4 or 4:30? Mary,
Yeah, that's fine.
Roy,
Either or.
25th, 4 or 4:30?
I thought I heard 4:33, so I was chuckling, but
So 4:30,
30.
4 or 4:30. All right, Jeff, you got another meeting? What time? Later that evening?
On Monday? No.
Oh, nothing. Okay, very good. All right, everybody's open. Let's shoot for 4 o'clock.
Is there any reason why we can't just meet in the castle locker room and get around that table? It has Zoom capability also.
Well, we could. I just worry about if the number of participants show up, visitors, because it's an open meeting.
Okay, well,
That's my only worry. I
I
mean,
just don't think this table.
no,
is
we're not
conducive.
going to,
Yeah.
we're going to have them bring tables in here.
Yeah.
We'll have tables, 2 of them, like, lengthwise next to each other, so we can put 5 chairs around it, facing each other, as well as a couple more if anybody wishes that we want to come and sit with us, or with chairs around the room. Will that work, Cindy? Yeah, we'll have to advertise, and I think John can help with that. Advertising that special meeting on Monday, the 25th. We got time. We can do it tomorrow morning. Okay, but let's go with our legalese. They will advise and guide us as to when that's got to go in. So John will visit with you. And we've talked about it, that it's only an 8-hour notice. And it could go in anytime. No, it's not a special meeting. This is a workshop. Well, it's the same thing. It's a meeting. But John, work with John. You'll get taken care of. So the room set up, we'll ask that 2 tables, podium be pulled forward if it can be. If it can't be, we'll just 2 tables so we can work as commissioners, and then chairs sorted accordingly. All right. I'll come in and make sure and help with that. Okay. So we'll go to 25th at 4:00.
Well, and we have to say why. I
Oh,
think-
it's for, well, it's budget and goal setting.
Yeah, and I just hope that we can be more specific each meeting, what we are going to address, and that we accomplish something, because it's so easy. I mean, with these meetings, we're tired. Okay, we kick it down the road, so that we
No,
be really positive about why we're meeting and what we hope to accomplish.
and hopefully after that meeting, we'll be able to lay
Yeah.
out the next meeting the same way. And I think that needs to be something we work at, Mary.
Okay.
All right, anything else, commissioners? Okay, shoot on 25th. Anything more for today, Roy?
I think we're good at this point, Doc.
All right, so with that, commissioners, anything to add before we adjourn?
Good meeting. Thank you.
No, well, it's gonna get better. We're gonna get better at this. We've got to make a difference. Got to help Bonnie out with the budget. All right,
She's got to help us out with it. Yeah.
I
think
know
We're
it.
gonna need to have a little
I
help.
know it, but we got to feel good about it. I do,
I already think next year's gonna be better.
I do
Yeah.
too. But we need to establish a process that is the same. For even if it's better, we've got to be very, very frugal. We still are responsible for our taxpayers, to our taxpayers. So let's find a way in which we can do a better job than what we have. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
And we may have you come in on one of our workshops if we have to break it down and need a little more understanding too. All right, thank you. All right, if there's no further business, Commissioner Lloyd,
Nope.
other commissioners?
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Shanefield, second
Second.
by Commissioner Lloyd. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.